The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you.
Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain where they could be alone. There, in their presence, he was transfigured. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. Suddenly, Moses and Elijah appeared to them. They were talking with him. Then Peter spoke to Jesus. "Lord," he said, "it is wonderful for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He was still speaking when suddenly a bright cloud covered them with shadow. And from the cloud there came a voice which said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. He enjoys my favor. Listen to him." When they heard this, the disciples fell on their faces, overcome with fear. But Jesus came up and touched them. "Stand up," he said. "Do not be afraid." And when they raised their eyes, they saw no one, but only Jesus. As they came down from the mountain, Jesus gave them this order: "Tell no one about the vision until the Son of Man has risen from the dead." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Just out of curiosity, how many of you here, perhaps with a show of hand, has visited this place, Tasmania, the southernmost part of Australia? Any of you here have been to Tasmania? Seems like no one, huh? Now, if you have not been there and you have a chance, I do strongly encourage you to go. Why? 2 months ago, in early January, all the young redemptorists here, we went to Australia to attend an important regional meeting. And after that, I stayed back for about another week, basically to spend some time with some of my family members who are there in Australia. And we made a short trip to Tasmania. And one day we went up to this place called Cradle Mountain. And me and my younger sister, we decided to go on a 6-hour hike up almost to the peak of the mountain. Now that hike was not an easy one. It's like about 3 hours all the way, it just keep going up. And it was quite challenging. There are some places that it was really physically challenging. You need to hold on to chains and yank yourself up. But when we were at the top of the mountain, overseeing the scenery down there, it was really a scene to behold. It was quite breathtaking. Now, just to give you some visualization, I would like to show you some photos. I hope it's there. Can we see the photo? All right. So that is, I think you can figure out, that is me overseeing the view from the top of the mountain. Of course, I'm there spoiling the scenery. So I'm going to show you another one. This is just the view of what you can see from the top of the mountain. Yeah. So actually from there, you can see 3 big lakes from very top up there. And I have to say that these photos, they are not doing any justice to the place. If you can really go there and experience it, is really quite breathtaking. So thank you. Now, when we were up there, it was just me and my younger sister, and we've decided to just really enjoy this view, and we took out the lunch that we packed, and we just sat there and had our lunch. But after a while, while in our conversation, both of us, without us telling each other, we just felt that strong sense to just remain silent and to just soak in the view. And as I was there eating, more and more I felt that it was a very spiritual moment for me. Suddenly I just have this very strong sense of connectedness to the world and of course to God. And after a while of just admiring this place and just being in that space of connectedness, I turned to my sister and said, "Should we pray?" And my sister, also a bit surprised, she said, yes, that's exactly how I felt. We should be in prayer. So we came together and we pray, we give thanks to God for all the blessings. But very importantly, we started naming all the people that we want God to bless. We ask God to bless our family members, we ask God to bless our friends, those who are in need. And of course, I actually offered up prayers for all of you, the people that I minister to, people that comes to Novena Church. And then after that prayer, we continue to just absorb the view, and we sat there for quite some time. And finally, with a lot of reluctance, we look at each other and we said, I think it's time for us to go. But still, there's very strong resistance to say that, oh, this is such a great place and really do not want to. But yet, we have to start that journey to climb back down. 3 hours of quite excruciating journey down back to flat land. Now, dear brothers and sisters, oftentimes we describe the season of Lent as a journey, an internal and spiritual journey. And today in our readings, we read of 2 stories, one from the Old Testament and one from the New Testament, of people who embark on a journey that ultimately change their lives. And maybe it's important today, as we read these stories, we ask, what has that got to do with us? What can I learn from that? And today, of course, I would like to offer some pointers for us to deepen this reflection. Now, the first point is, of course, before we embark on a journey, we need to firstly know where I am at. In the first reading from the book of Genesis, we read of the story of Abram, that ultimately became Abraham. Now, God came to him with an instruction that was very irrational. God suddenly just asked him, say, you leave your country, you leave your family, and you leave your father's house. And then, very funny, he asked him, go to the land that I will show you. Now, I believe for Abraham, it must have been very confusing for him. But behind this, I would like to invite you to focus on one aspect of what he was going through. Before he actually embarked on this journey, he was very clear of where he was at and what he's leaving to go into this journey of exploration. He knew that he was starting from this place where he called his country, his family, his father's house, and this is where the beginning of the journey. And today, I would like to invite you all to also just perhaps ponder on this. Before we embark on any journey, and of course, right now we are going on a Lenten journey, we have to ask ourselves, do we know where we are at? Where is my starting point? Am I aware of where I am in terms of my relationship with God right now? Am I aware of my blessings, of all the good things that I have? Am I aware of all the weaknesses, of all the sins that I have? And this is a time during this Lenten season, the church is inviting us for us to go through a time of examining our life. And therefore, oftentimes during Lent, we are invited to go for penitential service, to really come before God and to admit the faults that we have at this point of our life. When I was hiking up the mountain, I started thinking or reflecting on another kind of journey. Many people shared with me their journey of Camino, the Camino walk, the walk towards Compostela, is also a very famous pilgrimage journey. And many of them who have gone on this journey, they say that especially those who are the serious one with the backpack, with all their things there, when they are walking, that was the time where they really reflect, what are the things that I have in my life? What are the important things? What are the perhaps very secondary things are unnecessary but I have been clinging on in my life? It was during the walk that they suddenly realized, perhaps I don't need everything that is back there in my backpack that is weighing me down. Maybe even an extra piece of clothing that is not necessary. And therefore, perhaps the big invitation for us, before we begin anything, we have to start and ask ourselves, do I know where I am before God? So that I can know what I need to hold on to and what do I need to change. The second point is the way that we approach the journey. How can I have a proper attitude towards this journey? Someone once shared, Lent is not a sprint, nor is it a marathon, but Lent is a slow coming walk. What does that mean? Symbolically, when we think of Lent as a sprint, maybe some of us, we feel that this is a time where I need to do a lot of things. I need to start it quickly. I'm very engrossed in making a big difference. And therefore, at the beginning of Lent, we planned a lot of things. We do all our fasting. We go for Stations of the Cross. We do almsgiving. Perhaps it is good, but maybe that is not everything. That is not the way. Why? Later I'm going to explain. But some of us see Lent as a marathon. What does it mean? Symbolically, perhaps we see it as something that is going to make a great impact at the end. Marathon, we are always looking towards the final point, the end point. And therefore, we want, after this season of Lent, that we become a totally changed person. Yes, of course, it's good to have that expectation. But most often than none, maybe that expectation is not met. But when we see Lent as a slow coming walk, it is an invitation for us to see that this is a moment where we truly slow down a little bit and to see what are some of the rough edges in our life that we might need to do some trimming. This is a time where we are invited to be more mindful, more attentive, more calm, more present, more sensitive to the realities of my life, and to see what are some of the areas that perhaps I need to pay a bit more attention to and maybe make some slight changes. But behind all of this, the very important thing is the ability to let go and let God. What does that mean? In the Gospel reading of the Transfiguration, we see that the disciples suddenly have a new appreciation of who Jesus is. Now, in order to really understand this, we need to read it in context. Before the story of the Transfiguration, it was actually the conversation between Jesus and the disciples. And Jesus was asking them, who do you think I am? Who do people say that I am? And Peter, after being with Jesus for quite some time, he was very confident. He said that you are the Son of the living God. And thought, I've reached the point already. I know who you are. And of course, that was a very great proclamation of faith. But he was still expecting that as the Son of the living God, Jesus is going to be a very triumphant king, the one that's going to bring a lot of power and glory. But Jesus said, no, you still do not fully know who I am. And in this whole experience of the Transfiguration, he really changed once again the understanding of who he was for the disciples. And in order for that to happen, the disciples have to be able to open to the unknown. Now, in my trip up Cradle Mountain, at certain point, I also have this sense that I need to let go. I need to be able to just sense and be connected to the unknown. And it is in that moment that I suddenly have a stronger sense of connectedness with God. And therefore, this is a time of invitation, a time for us to slow down, to be aware of ourselves, to be aware of God, be connected, but most importantly, to allow ourselves to be led by God, to be awed by God. Final point is the ability to just focus on a little change in this journey. As I've shared with you, many of us might see the Lenten season as a marathon. We hope for, or we oftentimes hear of priests preaching for us that this is a time of great internal conversion. Yes, good if that happens in our life. But in reality, most times, this is not the case. But Lent can be a very important and a time that gives us long-lasting positive effect if we focus on the small changes and really work hard on it. What it means, when I was hiking back down, I was also trying to understand what this whole experience is all about. I suddenly realized that I cannot forever stay on to that experience of up there, that beautiful view. It will slowly fade in my memory. But I asked myself, is there anything that I can anchor on through this experience to help me move towards a better space? Can this experience help me change my life towards the better? So I asked myself, what did I bring on my way down? And of course, at that point of time, I told myself, I need to be a bit more appreciative of life, of my relationships with God, to be more open to the ability to be awed by God. And just like the disciples, they want to stay up on the mountain. They want to continue to be at that very great moment of grace. But Jesus tells them that the real work happens when they come down from the mountain after that great experience. Therefore, all these great moments, perhaps you have your special moments in life. These moments are not for possessing. It's not for us to always stay at that great, joyful moment. They are meant for pointing. They are times to point us towards the real meaning or the real direction of life. What are the one thing in my life that I need to focus on for us when we are at that high moments, for us to reflect? What is the one thing that I need to focus on so that I can come back to level ground and change, so that I can always be more open to experience the awesomeness of God? Therefore, this is the invitation. What are the small changes that I can put in my life so that I can celebrate Easter more authentically? So, dear brothers and sisters, the journey of faith is not about navigating to a perfect final destination. It is about knowing our starting point, knowing where I am, and taking one step forward, trusting that the one who was radiant on the mountain, the God who loves me, is the same one who is walking beside me right now. We don't have to find our way to God, because God has already found His way to be with us, to journey with us. What we need to do is just to get up, to follow, and put that extra effort to know the one who walks with us is beside me, as long as I'm willing to slowly make that change to grow closer to Him. And the one big important question that we have to ask ourselves is, am I ready to take this first step?